Hi, everyone. Welcome to Membership Voice. I'm Kero O'Shea, the coordinator of Voice and the host for this evening's webinar. A very special welcome to tonight's presenter, Assistant Governor Paul Elsley from Rotary Kingston in Canada. Paul, what time is it there at the moment?
It's very early here, just before 5 a.m.
Thank you, Paul. It's marvellous having you with us, and thank you for making that early morning sacrifice. At this stage, I'd like to acknowledge the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm hosting tonight's webinar. I acknowledge the strength of their continuing culture and offer my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'm looking forward to hearing about the Kingston Rotary Revival, because past history of Kingston sounds very similar to some of our traditional clubs. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what Assistant Governor Paul has to tell us about the remarkable story in Kingston. So, Paul, over to you, please.
Great. Thanks very much, Carol, for giving me this opportunity to speak to your zone members, particularly with a focus on membership. And what I want to talk today is about our story and what I would call some of the opportunities that we have witnessed during the pandemic and how we've taken advantage of some of those. It's quite a remarkable story, and it's not one that I could have predicted. So here we are in Kingston, Ontario, Canada. It's about halfway between Toronto and Montreal, cities you've probably heard of, and just across the border from the United States. We are adjacent to upstate New York, and we're in District 7040, which encompasses Eastern Ontario, Western Quebec, upstate New York, and then one of our northern territories, Nunavut. We've got a club in Iqaluit that's based there. So it's quite an interesting and diverse district. There are 65 clubs, and I'm the assistant governor of what's called Seaway West, which is a collection of 8 clubs right on the edge of the lake there. Our club was chartered 100 years ago, so this happens to be our centennial. And that's part of the story that I think has made our membership such a success. You can see my club is a fairly large club. I think we're the 4th largest club in our district. And it continues to grow. So what qualifies me to speak to you? Well, I've been in Rotary for almost a decade now. I was president during our centennial year. And I've also been for 3 or 4 years the district RILA chair. I'm now a member of the district training team. I'm co-chair of the membership committee here in my club, and I'm also on the district membership committee. Take a second and have a look at these statistics. As Kero said, fairly traditional. There are 21 districts in our zone. And what I'm presenting to you here are the last 2 years of membership statistics. Focus in there on 7040, which is my district. You'll note that the previous year, all 21 of our districts declined in membership. And that is a pattern that has been in place for a number of years now. But over this past year, 8 out of those 21 districts actually saw a net increase in membership. And my district was tops in the zone with 53 new members. And of those 53 members, 29 of them were right here in Kingston and 19 in my club. So how do we do that? Well, I need to take you back to March of 2020, when we're all becoming aware of this pandemic. And I recall I was in Florida at the time with my family, and we had to come home early to get back into the country. But everybody hunkered down at that point in time, including all Rotary clubs. We just weren't sure what was going to happen, and many of those Rotary clubs were, I think, quite fearful. And so they shut down for a time being. But because of my not-for-profit work here in the community, feeding children from food insecure homes, I became very aware that community needs were not lower. They were, in fact, higher than ever before. whether it was issues of mental health, food security, businesses struggling, people losing jobs, it was evident to me that Rotary was needed now more than ever, and it was no time for us to sit on the fence. We were in the midst of preparing for our centennial and been planning for it for a little over 3 years, but there was no mood to celebrate at that point in time, and we very quickly pivoted to the pandemic support of our community. And you can see here, we were heavily involved in feeding families. We were delivering food boxes to families directly to their doors, 550 at its peak in the summer of that year. We also produced thousands of masks and gave many of them out to young children whose families did not have this disposable income to buy the masks they would need for school and other such things. Because we were heavily engaged in the community, our community reached out to us and asked us to lead the mass vaccination clinic as volunteers, the distribution of rapid test kits, and now they have asked us to be quite heavily involved in the construction of a community food warehouse here in the community. So when you're engaged, people recognize it, and good things tend to happen as a result. But back to our centennial here. As I say, we have been planning for a little over 3 years, and one of the things we did was to dream big, but also set a strategic plan for our centennial. We had 4 primary goals: to enhance collaboration amongst the clubs here in Kingston and with our community partners, to raise a lot of money because we had 15 projects that we wanted to undertake, and we wanted to expand the profile of Rotary in Kingston. People were very familiar with Rotary Park. They may know the name Rotary, but they did not know there were 6 clubs, and they certainly weren't familiar with what we did or that there was a possibility they could join as members. And then, of course, we wanted to try and reverse the trend of declining membership and increase our membership over the course of the year. So, in terms of collaboration, we've established a President's Council here in Kingston. And so that's the presidents and vice presidents of each of the clubs meeting monthly to help coordinate our efforts and keep in regular communication, so we're all aware of what's going on. We've also reached out to a number of new community organizations, many of whom had a modest relationship with us in order to try and grow those relationships. And many of our centennial projects, in fact, involve multiple partners here in the community. Fundraising is going to be a real challenge for us. We lost our big fundraiser, the gala, for which we had planned to raise $100,000. We lost our golf tournament. So 2 of our biggest fundraisers were gone. How are we going to fund all of these projects? Well, we looked at some new ideas, but we also went back to some of our old ideas to see if we could make them work even better. And so one of our fundraisers is the sale of a cash calendar, which we do through the fall heading into the Christmas season. Normally, we'd raise about $18,000 from that. This year, we raised $30,000. Quite surprising. And we also looked to new areas for financial support, applying for grants through local foundations. We even had a global grant project based right here in Kingston, reaching out to some of our friends in India who helped support the project. It was $144,000. And as you know, it's a good way to leverage funds for your projects. Increasing the awareness of Rotary in Kingston was a very big goal that we had. We wanted to make sure that everyone in the community knew what Rotary was all about. We wanted to inform them about our good works, and we wanted to keep that message going throughout the course of the year and on a regular basis. You see here a picture of the town crier, who happens to be the world champion, by the way. He's announcing a year of Rotary in Kingston to the community. We had an article in the newspaper every single week since the beginning of January, and we'll continue to have articles in the newspaper throughout the course of this year. We've been on television regularly. We've had lots of great stories in the press. And I think it's fair to say that everybody in Kingston now knows what we're about. But let's focus in on membership. Our goal was to increase that membership and reverse the trend. We wanted to recruit in a different way, to take on a new approach, if you will. We wanted to develop a very coherent and realistic plan. We wanted to try some new partners to look in new directions for members. We also wanted to look at some of the things that we were doing and see if we could make them better, including improving the process of induction and coming up with a very good retention plan. Because as we all know, most clubs are able to admit a new member or two or three, but they lose more than they admit. And so the net is a loss. And so part of this message, I think, is that you must have a very strong retention plan in order to keep those new members who join your clubs. So let's look at each one of those. I would say traditionally we had been very reactive rather than proactive. And I mean, we waited for people to come to us. You know, occasionally a member would bring somebody to a meeting and we'd hope that they would join our club, but we wouldn't really do too much about it. So our goal was to be far more proactive. You see here a poster that we created, Why Join Rotary, which we've been putting out on social media. And we've got an accompanying 1-minute video that has been regularly shown on television spots and again, through social media. So getting the message out that we're looking for members and we want you to join, and there are very few restrictions as to who can join. It's not your grandfather's Rotary Club. We also knew that if folks were going to join, that we had to give them a value proposition that made sense. And so that means improving our meetings and making them very dynamic, but also having more service opportunities. And this has been a real shift in the way we do business in our club. I would say in a typical month, while we do meet 4 times every Thursday at the lunch hour, we're also having at least 2 service opportunities, if not more, every single month. Because we're finding a lot of the new members may not be able to come to a lunchtime meeting, but they may well be able to show up as they did last night to help Lionhearts fill food boxes and those kinds of things. So some of it is timing and opportunity, and I think a lot of the new members are looking to serve. In terms of setting a plan, one of the things that we did for the first time was to set an annual goal. So for our centennial year, we wanted to see if we could grow our club by 5 members. It was a very modest goal, but having declined for 15 years or so in succession prior to that, it seemed relatively ambitious. We also wanted to try and look, I guess, beyond our club and within our district and try and be one of the top 3 clubs in the district. So setting goals is a big part of the process too. Our messaging, we wanted to be very focused. And by that, I mean, we wanted to get out a very clear message that we were non-denominational, we were non-political, that anybody could join, that we welcomed everyone to join. And so I think that sort of changed the game a little bit. It was also a great team effort. We collaborated here in Kingston amongst the clubs, and we were all sending out the same messages. We were trying to bring people and grow Rotary, not necessarily our individual club, but to grow Rotary here in Kingston. And as we positioned it, we've got a club that will meet your needs. We've got a breakfast club, a lunch club, a dinner club, a pub club. We've got a young professionals club. There's something for everyone. We also looked to tap into some district resources. Our club had never really engaged much within the district. And the district has lots to offer and a lot of support in place. We've got a membership committee that exists in the district, and they are now meeting and holding seminars on a regular basis, much like you're doing here today. We also wanted to look at our classifications and see where there were classification gaps in our clubs. and look to attract some new types of members. As I mentioned, part of this is about your relationship with your community organizations. So we have something called the Community Outreach Grants Program, and about 30 community organizations apply to us for grants on an annual basis. What we decided to do was to reach out to those clubs and say, would you consider an enhanced partnership? Would you consider joining our clubs as members? And here's why we think it's a good idea. We did the same thing with some local businesses, offering corporate memberships to them. We also, as I mentioned, looked to identify some gaps in skill sets in our clubs, because probably like you, there are a handful of people who seem to do all the work in the clubs. We need some folks who have the skill sets to be able to take on some of those responsibilities. Of course, diversity, equity, and inclusion is a big notion here today, and we're trying to diversify our club. Too many of the folks in our club look a lot like me. We also wanted to consider new ideas, like Friends of Rotary. And these are people who have helped us out with projects and attended some of our galas and other events. May not be members, but again, might become members if we develop that relationship. Making the induction special was another key component of what we did. We wanted to make it the central event during our meetings. So after we have our national anthem and our Rotary reflection, the induction takes place. And this year, between February, the first week in February and the end of May, we inducted one new member into our club each week. That's quite extraordinary, 19 in a row. We did that by, once they had made contact with us, either came with a friend or reached out to us in some way, there was a one-on-one meeting by Zoom with the president. We wanted to let them know that they were so important that the president was going to have an audience with them. We provide them with a little bit of Rotary homework so they get to know Rotary a little better. Prior to their orientation session, they're assigned a mentor, and I met with the mentor and the prospective member in an orientation session. We're very realistic about our expectations of new members, and we sought out their interest in joining. Why did they want to become a Rotarian? What was it they were looking to achieve? So those things were very clear at the front door. As I said, we make it the highlight of the meeting, and the chat box is filled with lots of welcomes and congratulations. And at the end of that induction process, I think that the new member does, in fact, feel very, very special. We've got 5 people who are involved in our induction ceremony, including a new member. And what we do tell them right off the top is that there are lots of opportunities in Rotary. Take your time, feel us out for a little bit, join a couple of committees down the road, but we're not expecting too much of you too soon. And then finally, member retention. So what I didn't tell you was, while we admitted 19 new members, a record for our club this year, we also lost 4. 2 of those moved out of the area, and a couple of folks suffered job losses, and they just weren't in a position to continue. You're always going to have losses, but you want to try and minimize them. So what we need to do, I think, a better job of is, once we've admitted new members, is to engage them on a regular basis, to have the mentor checking in with them, to recognize them periodically. So at our meeting today, over the lunch hour, we're going to be recognizing 3 of our new members for some outstanding work they've been doing over the past couple of weeks. Lots of engagement strategies. We've got a membership committee that's very strong, that is also actively involved in the retention plan. And when we have to, of course, we conduct exit interviews to make sure that we don't have some of the same folks leaving when they might have stayed had we done a better job. And that covers our story. Again, it's been quite a special year. 19 new members, 39 new members here in Kingston, and tops in our zone for this past year. Kira was asking me whether we've been able to maintain that momentum heading into the first 4 months of this year, and I can report that we're admitting our 6th new member for this year at today's lunchtime meeting. So yes, we've been able to keep that momentum. In fact, we're even to the point now where we're thinking that we need to slow down a little bit.
Fabulous. Paul, that's just really remarkable. And that you're maintaining the momentum this year points to it being more than just a flash in the pan. But we have some very successful Rotary clubs here in Australia, and one I found out about recently in terms of membership growth is North Hobart, and I'm thrilled that the North Hobart's membership director, Ros Tierney, is in the audience tonight, and Ros has a question about mentoring. So, Ros, if you'd like to turn your microphone on and pose your question, please.
Thank you very much. Congratulations to the AG on the presentation. It was a wonderful story to hear. So thank you, Paul. I'm as Caro said, we have a lot of new members too, and I heard what you said about mentoring, but I wanted to pick your brains a little more, because we have 37 members in the club now, including about 15 new members over the past 15 months or so. I'm finding it a big struggle to recommend mentors for each new member to the president, because the ones who are already got mentors don't want to give up those mentors. So do you double up and have people mentoring more than one? And what do you do about Rotarians who are in the club who haven't been chosen to be mentors because they're not great role models?
Yeah.
Do you give everybody a job even though they might not do a very good job? What do you do?
Yeah, so we like to think of it this way. Bringing a new member into your club is a team effort. From the membership committee to the actual membership. I'll give you an example of one other thing that we do. So at today's meeting, which is a Zoom meeting, we have gone to hybrid twice a month, but today's meeting is a Zoom meeting. We're going to go into breakout rooms at 1:00. And the idea there is for a small group of veterans, 3 or 4 of them, and a couple of new members to be in each of the breakout rooms. And it's an opportunity for all of the veterans in our club to engage with the new members, to get them to know each other a little better, to build those relationships, to check in on the new members and see how they're doing. So even though they're not mentors, there's still an expectation that all of the folks in the club will be part of the process of engaging new members. Yes, we do double up. I try not to have anybody have more than 3 mentees at one time. That's our max. But we do have a couple of folks who are in that position. Some of that has to do with the pre-existing relationship between the mentor and the mentee, or that they happen to have passions that are very similar. But yes, we're in a similar situation. But I would say in our particular case, we're a larger club, so we have more people to draw from than you would. But doubling up is something that we have done.
Thanks, Ross. Thanks, Paul. Paul, this presidential council and the knock-on effect, the collaboration between your clubs in Kingston, just sounds like a wonderful model in itself, because we do have communities where there are multiple Rotary clubs, and those relationships are not always, sometimes they're very good, but not always brilliant. How does your presidential council work, and what's the reality of the collaboration between the clubs?
Yeah, good question. So let me begin by saying that with respect to our centennial, rather than celebrate the centennial of my club, we decided from the get-go that we wanted to celebrate 100 years of Rotary in Kingston. That meant all Rotarians getting involved in the centennial. So we've got 200 Rotarians in the city of Kingston. And I should mention that Kingston is 120,000 people. So we're a relatively small city. And I think that makes our accomplishments even more extraordinary. So we meet once a month, and we've got 8 clubs who are involved. And all of those clubs in Kingston, plus a couple of small communities nearby. It's not perfect by any means, and it's something that has existed only for a couple of years, so we're going through some growing pains. But the goal is that each club will give a report at the outset of the meeting. And so we all become very aware of that particular club's projects and interests and challenges. And we're offering lots of support. And I think what has happened is that when we tell each of our stories, we get to know each other a lot better. We are collaborating with a number of committees. So not only do we meet as a President's Council, but we now have a Kingston Membership Committee. We've got a Kingston Communications Committee and a central website, the portal through which people in the community are exposed to Rotary. So we've got a number of like committees that have been established to coordinate our efforts. Last night we had this, we were helping fill food boxes. There were 4 members from 3 different clubs that were present. So a lot of joint work is happening. It takes a while to build those relationships, and each club continues to have its own identity, but we are working together more and more.
So what I heard you say there, just to clarify, you've got a Kingston-wide, all 6 clubs collaborating on membership. So if say, they identify a potential new member, does that membership committee point that person to the most appropriate fit?
That's right. And so we take them to rotaryinkingston.cool, which identifies all 6 of the clubs on the site. Gives them a sense of the flavor of the club and when they meet and so on. And yes, we're not trying to hoard them so that they all join my club. We're trying to grow Rotary in Kingston, and I think this is part of the mindset. It's not about growing your club as much as it is about building Rotary, about making Rotary stronger. And that's one of the reasons why I've been sharing this story far and wide. I've had a presentation in South Africa, British Columbia, the United States, all over the place, because I think it's important to share some of the strategies that have been successful for us and to see the pandemic as an opportunity rather than a challenge.
Well, the thing about the pandemic, of course, is that it's created some more huge needs. And I mean, one of the test of any Rotary club is how relevant it is to its community. So if you have a dire need, then that's whilst one doesn't sort of wish for these things, that is a huge opportunity for a good Rotary club to do its job.
It is, and it's very clear to us that some of the other service organizations are even in more decline than Rotary. That Rotary, in fact, in many ways, is not only the largest service organization in the world, but it's the one that seems to be, thriving, or at least continues to be relevant.
It's always good to look at things that may not have worked so well on the way through. It's a wonderful story. So what are some of the learnings on the way through to this path to collaboration?
Yes, we had my club's membership committee met the other night, and a number of folks were offering concerns at admitting so many new members so quickly. And part of the problem, I think, too, is that we haven't been able to meet these folks in person. That makes it a real struggle, right, to build those relationships. And so we have actually decided that we need to slow down. We're admitting our 6th new member today, but we're not going to be campaigning too vigorously for more members. We want to focus in on trying to build those relationships. So I think this is one of the challenges for us is to strengthen the relationships, to make sure that the new members are feeling a part of our community. One of the things we've done lately is to increase the number of socials that we have, smaller socials, get-togethers at someone's house usually, with no more than, say, 15 to 20 people. Often it's been outdoors. But we want to try and bring new members to those socials. So to get the mentor to come to the social and bring the mentee with them so that we can begin to build those relationships. That's certainly a challenge. And I would say one of the other challenges has been trying to figure out, I guess, what roles these folks can play within our club. Many of the new members are full-time workers. We meet at Thursday over the lunch hour. And so we've had to adjust our expectations. That is to say, come to the meeting for 20 minutes if that's all you can spare, but we want to see you. And so we've been pushing this as well. And I think you've got to change the game along the way sometimes in order to accommodate the needs and the particular set of circumstances that you're facing. So it's not uncommon for some of our new members to be present for part of a meeting, but then they've got to run off to another meeting somewhere or do something else that they have to do. That's
often one of the tests of a good Rotarian, because some of our best are people who are committed to multiple volunteering and opportunities in the community. Mark Huddleston, who's one of our Australian-based membership specialists and has written a book on Rotary, has talked about clubs' inflexibility of some traditional clubs and how a successful Rotary club needs to adapt to the needs of particularly new members, that it's not a matter of sort of fitting the traditional square hole. How are the clubs in Kingston doing that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And so my club is perhaps the most traditional of the clubs and the longest standing one. I have some members in my club who have had perfect attendance for 40 years. That's not the goal of everyone, and it's certainly not the goal of a lot of our new members. It's about engagement, and I was very happy to see Rotary International make that shift to say it's not about attendance, it's about engagement, it's about a life of service, it's about those kinds of things. And as you said, many of these new members are very engaged in our community, not always through Rotary, but through lots of ways. And so some of our longstanding members who still have an expectation that attendance is a priority. And so I will often have one of my older members reaching out to me to say, we haven't seen this new member in 4 weeks. What's going on? And I have to keep the attendance police at bay because we have to shift. We have to shift to be relevant.
Absolutely. Now, Assistant Rotary Coordinator Brian or District Membership Chair Carol has an observation to make here, so I'm not sure which it is, but over to you guys for that comment, please.
Thanks, Kira, and thank you very much, Paul, for your presentation tonight. You'd fit in very, very well in our club, I believe me, in East Maitland in the Hunter Valley, New South Wales. And it's good to see Keith Bush on here as well, one of the members from our club and a past district membership chair. Congratulations on getting those members in, and what a headache it is to have so many new members coming in, eh? It's wonderful, and my own club, we've revitalised as well over the last 3 years for totally different reasons. It was pre-COVID, but as you said, what was interesting? Oh, sorry, it's not COVID. One of the issues that the members highlighted was you're bringing the members in too quick, and we had a massive intake into our club once we changed of new members, and it took us a little time, and these new members actually sat down were quite concerned that they didn't know anything about Rotary. And our own club, we didn't have mentors for them. And Ros brought up earlier, how do you get them? My club didn't have mentors because we'd never had new members. So, so we never had to worry about a mentor problem. And all of a sudden, Bushy might be able to correct me, but I think we had 12 in the first year and 5 the next year or 7 the next year. And we had members leave as well for different reasons. Only a couple disgruntled, but most of them left for personal reasons. So we had to really sit down rapidly and develop an induction program. We done a one night very casual induction program, drinks, nibbles. I speak about Rotary at an international level very quickly because they're not that interested. They get about 1.5 minutes on that, and then Carol speaks at district level. And then we have another member speaks at club level. But the members have come through it. It's a structured setup we have, and they're very comfortable with understanding Rotary at the end, and they do feel more comfortable in the club. And we have put the mentors in, but I think, as Ros pointed out, you have to have the right person there as a mentor. It just can't be anyone from your club. And sometimes they may have to have a dual role, but congratulations, and particularly of having the forethought of that collaborative approach of getting all the clubs together. It's not about a club, it's about Rotary. And that's what Carol does as I'll give her a plug, as a membership chair for the district. She puts members into the best fit club for them, not the club. Not
for their personal reasons.
Yes, for their personal reasons. Yeah, and we recommend that they go to. Carol takes them around to the clubs herself, but we recommend 3 to 5 clubs if they're in the area that they go and have a look at before they actually select one. So and it's been very successful. So we've got some great tips from you tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And one of the things that I didn't say is when you bring these new folks into your club, it's a whole new source of energy, right? They are excited, they're anxious, and they bring tremendous skills. So just to give you an example, one of our new members came up with the idea to produce a book highlighting 40 pandemic heroes in the community. And the goal is to raise $40,000 from the sale of these books. Well, if that new member wasn't in the club, that project is likely not happening, and the potential of raising $40,000 disappears. So, there are tremendous benefits to these new folks, and it's about harnessing that energy and engaging them in ways that sort of fit with their passions and their skill sets.
Paul,
may I share a funny story with you there on that one? Carol, we have a club here in Newcastle, which is like yourself, it's 100 years old next year. And very elderly members, professional. It's always been a professional members club, doctors, lawyers, business leaders in the CBD. And it's changed. It's changed over the years. Those men have grown older, and they had to bring some women in. They've let the women in, and but the business focus moved out of the CBD into a urban sprawl, and they lost those professionals, and they were struggling to make their 100 years. And we had an inquiry, and it was a lady. How old, Carol?
She's about 40.
About 40 years old, anyway, and she lives 300 metres away from us, and rather than bring her in, we said we'd love to have you in our club, but her business was in Newcastle, 25 miles away, if you speak miles, 25 miles away. So we suggested she went to this club. She went there, and the president rang up and said, "Oh, thank you very much, Carol." She said, "The men don't go to sleep now, but we've got a young woman here." So they're awake during the meeting. and that's not to be sexist, but she is actually invigorated that club, exactly as you said. She's doing their Facebook, she's doing their media, and she has got that club excited. And I think Carol told me they've got another new member coming in today. So they're a club that'll slowly generate.
Yeah, one of the things I'm most proud of with our induction of new members is that we have grown from 30% female in our club to 43%. Many of the ladies in our club are taking on the leadership roles within our club, and they're really changing the game for us. And I'm a big fan.
You've had this influx of new members and obviously some young people there. Lindisfarne, when we did a story on the very, very successful Lindisfarne revival, one of the net effects of the changes there was the average age of their club dropped 20 years. What sort of change in your average age or age mix have you seen with these new people, Paul?
Yeah, I would say the average age has dropped maybe 4 years in our club, from 65 down to 61. But many of the new members are, in fact, quite younger. We've got a young woman in the club who works with the Boys and Girls Club, and she's joined, and she's 27 years old. I think she's our youngest member at this point in time. But many of the folks who are new are working full-time, and they range in age from 27 to, I think we've admitted a couple who are probably in their early 60s. There are a handful of folks who are retired. Seems to suit well with a lunchtime club like ours. But there's no doubt that most of the new members are quite a bit younger than have made our club very, very much younger than it was before.
Paul, Andy Rajapaksi, whose district managed to grow 200 members last year. We were talking about earlier on that they had developed a long-term strategic approach to this, and it paid off big time last Rotary year, up 200. But one of the things that Andy points to as a consequence of that is the importance of what he calls, I think the term is strategic continuity. And in fact, so where you have continuity of leadership, you don't have president saying this is my year and the club lurching all over the place. Are you seeing that strategic or that leadership continuity developing at Kingston? Because it does seem to underpin long-term success.
Yeah, and I think that's partly the role of the President's Council. There's a good deal of continuity there. You've got the President, you've got the Vice President. And so we're trying to build on some themes. We're trying to grow collaboration. And these themes are continuing regardless of who's president of a club. Of course, each president is going to take things in a slightly different direction. They want to carve their own path a little bit. But I think we've done a pretty good job when I look at our own board, for instance. A pretty good job of looking in the longer term and not just toward annual goals. And so I think that's going to help us continue to thrive as a club when we do that.
You mentioned amongst your portfolio of jobs, and it looks like you're a very busy Rotary volunteer. You mentioned that you're the district's RILA chair, which brings us to another thing that I reckon, another area where I think Rotary clubs could do better, and that is using Rotary youth programs to strengthen clubs and develop members rather than just perhaps sending anyone in the community on the program. Does Kingston use Rotary youth programs like RILA strategically?
Yes, we do. That's a very good point. You're speaking to someone who attended RILA back in 1975. And I think many of the folks who are in Rotary, when they look back on their lives, will see these moments when they were engaged with Rotary and maybe weren't aware of it, like me. Yeah, we're very strategic about that. Our belief is that if you can hook them when they're younger, get them involved in, say, exchange, get them involved in one of our Rotary Adventure programs or RILA, get them to join an Interact club, and then at the university level, a Rotaract club. If you can get them involved in 2 or 3 of these things, they're far more likely to become Rotarians down the road. And I think the statistics point that out. And so it is very strategic for us. Our club is very much focused on youth projects and youth programs. And we try and give them that experience, those transformative experiences that are so powerful for them So they become young Rotarians, if you will, and continue on. One of the statistics that alarms me most at the Rotary International Convention in Toronto a couple of years ago, they said that 90% of Rotaractors do not become Rotarians. And I think that's tragic. And so it's been nice to see a shift in the way of thinking. For the first time, at the session you and I both attended, Carol, I heard them speak of 1.46 million Rotarians because they were including Rotaractors. And that public statement for the first time told me a lot, that Rotaractors are now on an equal footing. One of the things we did during the centennial was to charter a new club, a young professional Rotaract club. So many of these kids had been involved in the University Rotaract Club here in Kingston, and but had sort of outgrown that. And rather than join one of the traditional Rotary clubs, they decided to charter their own. And so we sponsored them, and we've been helping them grow. They're up to 10 members right now and doing some very interesting things. Assistant Governor Casey Tan from, I think it's District 9800, I may be wrong there, might be 9810. Casey, did you have a question there, mate?
I'm just picking up on AG Paul's point about how he was a member of RILA before. And I noticed that I think Dr. Jessie Harmon mentioned one that she was the ex-RILA. And recently I attended another function where someone else said he was an ex-RILA as well. So I was just wondering, all these potential pool of leaders that Rotary trained through the years, in your case, 1975, I remember attending, I think the RI conference, not this virtual one, but the one last year, where the numbers of something like 50,000 or something like that, if you add in RILA, Youth Exchange, RIPE, and all the rest, has gone through Rotary over the years. But is there a database? Is there some way we can find these people? Because they're all over the place, and many of them probably in leadership position now and are very keen to put back in, but are not being given a tab, because some of them, like your case, would have been told that you can't apply to join Rotary, as you was in 1975, and therefore are waiting to be invited, and no one invite you because we didn't think you're good enough, because based on those old rules, if you had to apply, you're not good enough. That's a very good point, Casey. We need to do a much better job of tracking the young people who are involved in Interact and some of our adventure programs. We need to build that database. I mean, when I think of the kids who are attending RILA, for instance, they are all leaders in their schools and in their communities already, and they're a perfect fit to become Rotarians. So we've got to track them in a better way so that we can continue to reach out to them down the road. I think it's a real potential area for growth for us, and we haven't done a very good job of tracking them. It's interesting because there's a major push underway at the moment to encourage Australian districts, or Zone 8 districts, I think it's New Zealand as well, to connect with alumni. I know that my own district's membership team is working on that, and of course some of the contact details for people who were involved 40 years ago are a bit flaky, but certainly the move is afoot. Yeah, and as RILA chair, we look to build Facebook pages and other such things that exist during the event. And those links continue to be established. We actually invite RILA graduates to come back and help us with RILA in succeeding years. So we try and maintain those contacts, another way of further engaging these young people. We've had limited trials of a form of traineeship where a young person is offered a place on RILA, and obviously the club pays for it. And in return for that, they're asked to do a job, say, for example, preparing a marketing plan or something, a real measurable job that they can put in their CV. And so they're able to say that they achieved something for Rotary that could be good for them professionally. Do you see scope to utilise that in the Kingston success story? It's not an idea I had that we had considered, but I think it's a great idea. It reminds me of, so we've got two universities in Kingston, Queen's University, which is
world-renowned, and the Royal Military College. And Queen's University in particular has developed an outreach program. And many of the young folks who are attending the university have great skill sets. And so they are now reaching out to service organizations to help them with some of those tasks. And I think it's a good way for us here in Kingston. We've begun to build partnerships that way. But I think you're right. I think there's a real opportunity for those kinds of partnerships that we can take advantage of that could really assist us with our clubs and at the same time help to build future Rotarians.
Your model, your collaborative model in Kingston is obviously working brilliantly. Is it catching on elsewhere in your district and zone?
Yeah, I think in our district, I worry that people are getting tired of hearing about the Kingston story. But I will tell you that I've given presentations to many of the clubs in our district. They've been recorded. They continue to be shared widely. And, I hear presidents in some of the clubs talking about the Kingston model and embracing components of the Kingston model that they hadn't considered. And so I think that's why it's so important to share the story, is because we can help other clubs grow, right? There's no reason why, it's not just a particular to the fact that we had a centennial. It's so many things. And I think there are tremendous opportunities for all clubs to reverse these declining membership trends and grow. It's not rocket science.
No. One of the things that does seem to be part and parcel of that is this issue of strong leadership and leaders who are proud of their Rotary and express that pride. Does that seem to be consistent with what's happening in Kingston?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can tell you that the members are proud too. And so they're more likely to bring somebody to a meeting. They're more likely to reach out in a way that they might not have reached out before, because they're very proud of what we're doing. And I think that pride is catching. We've had a number of people who have been in the community, who saw the video on TV, who heard about one of our or read about one of our projects in the newspaper, and reached out to us and say, I want to be part of that. This sounds engaging and exciting. Can I become a member? And that's sort of a new chapter for us, that this kind of thing is happening. And the members are all very proud of what we have been doing. And that's great, because they then become your best advocates.
Well, that's true. I mean, if we want to create an aspirational model where young people in particular aspire to be in Rotary, that excitement's it's really got to be part of it, along with doing relevant things. Has that been your experience? Yeah,
absolutely. It has, very much so. And one of the other things I didn't mention that I highlighted a little bit was the notion of dynamic meetings. Our attendance during Zoom was higher than it had been in person. It was not uncommon for us to have between 60 and 70 people attending our meetings. We had great speakers we typically wouldn't have had, because they didn't have to leave their office to speak to us. Great dynamic meetings, and so people were excited to be attending our meetings. And it's something I worry about a little bit as we move back to in person, that we might lose some of those opportunities. And so that's why we are inclined to move to a hybrid model. So, twice a month, we have 25 people meeting in person at our facility. But we've got an equal number or more who are online using Zoom. And so we're working at trying to make this a dynamic experience for both groups, which is fairly challenging.
Yeah, it does seem that you've had a fair amount of success so far, Paul, with that goodwill and collaborative spirit there. And I love that mix of clubs. You mentioned the 6 different types of clubs. It does seem that you've pretty much got something for everyone.
Yeah, I wish I had known about the pub club when I joined, because I might have gone to that club instead of the one I'm currently in. I'm a fan of pubs.
Yeah.
Sorry
They
to interrupt
certainly-
there, Paul. There is a Rotary fellowship called the Brew Fellowship, which I'm a member of. So I reckon you should join, because it's good fun.
Yes,
Sorry.
okay. Thanks
I
for
think-
that recommendation. I'll look into it.
I think Brian Coffey wants to say something about brew as well. So over to you, Brian.
Yeah, I'm speaking in Charlotte, North Carolina tomorrow night about brew. Beer Rotarians enjoy worldwide. So
Nice, very nice.
But it's 10:30 at night, so I won't be able to have a drink here. Otherwise, I won't be able to speak to it.
Well, it's a little early for me.
One last question, though. One last question that I like to ask all champion club builders, even though it might seem to be obvious. Paul Elsley, Assistant Governor Paul Elsley, why are you in Rotary?
Yeah, that's good. And part of this, one of the nicest features we have in those breakout rooms is when veteran members tell their stories to the new members. Why did you join Rotary? Why are you still in Rotary? What keeps you here? And I think that really resonates with new members. So I moved to Kingston about a decade ago when my wife changed careers and applied to Queen's Law School. That brought us to Kingston. We knew no one in the community. And, I was in a position to be able to retire from my teaching career. And I was looking to engage in the community. And so I reached out to Rotary. My father-in-law is a Rotarian, and he encouraged me to seek them out. Just so happened that I could walk to meetings. And so, very quickly, I got to know an awful lot of people in the community who then put me in touch with other people in the community. And we had a big, happy Rotary family that I was exposed to right off the top. And so I got involved because we were new to the community and I wanted to serve, obviously. And Rotary was the perfect venue for doing so.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thanks, Paul. We'd like to give you a round of applause, Paul. So well done, mate. Love this story.
Well, thank you very much. And, I hope this isn't the only time that we're in connect with one another. I hope this is the beginning of potentially a relationship. I'm happy to stay engaged with you folks and see how our stories unfold.
Well, you're officially a proxy Zone 8 club building champion now, Paul. So who knows where that's going to lead. Dear audience, I've loved having you with us tonight. Thank you for the engagement, and thank you for the questions and the commentary. And I hope you'll be back with us soon. Anyway, on that note, good night. Good night, everyone.
Nice meeting everyone.
Thank you.